Hello everyone, this is GrindCore with my new series for Deuces Cracked. In this series I'll be moving up through the stakes, playing 2 sessions at NL 50, NL 100, NL 200 and NL 400. At the beginning of each video I'll briefly go over some concept that will come back during the sweat, and at the end of each video I'll do a quick recap of the session, review a hand or something. Right, so the first video will be at NL 50. And this recent thread on the Deuces Cracked forums really illustrates a very important concept here. Right, so the hand, it's 2 Deuces Cracked members, they know each other. Or they don't necessarily know each other, but they do know that they're Deuces Cracked members, they've been chatting about it. And they say they've been fairly aggressive and active at the table. So pretty standard, aggressive regulars. Right, so hero opens. We don't know what he has, doesn't really matter. Gets 3-bet by the villain small blind, and we call. Villain c-bets, complete brick board. Then he double barrels a brick on the turn, and hero jams over it. So what is the weakest hand that small blind should be calling with here? Alright, now, Deuces Cracked member The Geek, he made an excellent post about this. He says he has trouble with spots like this because here he says well, you can just read it for yourself, but he says like he would consider calling ace high here because villain probably doesn't have a 3 in his preflop calling range of the 3-bet, neither a 6, and with 7s through 10s he's never shoving, and with jacks through aces he'd either have 4-bet preflop or he'd just be calling down. So when he shoves here, he must have random air, and ace high beats air, so I call. And he specifically actually said that I might be thinking something like that. And he's correct about it. When I look at his hand, that's pretty much exactly what's going through my head. But then this is what he's having trouble with. Yeah, he calls it fuzziness. He says he probably shouldn't have a 3 or a 6 here, but it's microstakes and he might. And he probably is not shoving 7s through 10s, but then again maybe he's decided that he wants to get the money in before the river is an ace or a king or something. It's obviously a leak, but it could be the case. And suddenly, now when you look at your ace high and you're worried that villain might be shoving pocket 9s here, then then it's a pretty bad spot. So, and the funny thing is, he's actually correct about both things here. He's correct about my thought process when I look at the hand, but he's also correct about this part. And the reason for that is that it's microstakes. People are less predictable. Like at microstakes, people might be doing exactly these things for the reasons he's saying. Just shoving the 9s because he's afraid of an ace or a king or something, or just calling with 6-7 suited preflop because he hasn't learned that he should be folding it yet. My style with all the hero calls and all that, it works really well at small stakes especially, because that's kind of a sweet spot where all the regulars don't have random leaks anymore, but they're also not tricky enough to deviate from their predictable play yet. At NL 1000 or something, a regular might be shoving pocket 10s here in order to induce an ace high hero call, and a small stakes player wouldn't even be considering that play. So you kind of have micro stakes where people just do random things because they're bad, like shoving pocket 10s here, and then small stakes everything becomes really predictable. Everybody's calling with pocket 10s and all the shoves are bluffs. And then at higher stakes, you start getting regulars again who are intentionally shoving here to induce sorts of hero calls. So, at micro stakes, it's hard to make these really read-based specific hero calls, and at higher stakes, it's also harder. But small stakes is kind of the sweet spot for that. So, yeah, in this hand, because it's NL 50, if you have ace high, you should probably just be folding, because yeah, people just do random stuff and you could easily be beat. And that's really important for microstakes in general. People are so random and do things that you can't really predict, even if their stats show that they're completely standard regular, like a 21-17 or something. A 21-17 at NL50 might have some sort of random leak, like calling a 3-bet with 6-7 or shoving 10s here for protection, while at small stakes all 21-17s play exactly the same. So yeah, the way that you beat micro stakes, it's not by making sick hero calls or really thin value plays or whatever, because you just don't, you can never really get quite a read to do that. You beat micro stakes simply by making strong hands and getting them to showdown. That's the only way to beat unpredictable players, really. Let's say that you're playing against a bot who's literally programmed to do random things. He doesn't know anything about poker. There's like a 33% chance he'll fold, 33% chance he'll call, and 33% chance he'll raise. And then all raise sizes are equally likely. A bot like that, you would never be able to put him on hand. You simply don't know what he has. But the way that you would crush that bot is simply making top pair and then getting all the money in. There's a 33% chance that he calls when you shove. Or maybe you should shove minus one big blind, so there's a 33% chance that he calls and a 33% chance that he raises all in. But yeah, microstakes just harder to get a grasp on exactly what's going on in your opponent's heads. So in general, when you have a strong hand, but some guy is making a play on you that looks really strong, and you might consider some sort of hero fault, just call. It's microstakes. There's a spaz factor. People do random dumb things. At small stakes you can make the hero faults or the hero calls or the thin value bet because of whatever read you have. But at micro stakes, just play more solid. It's a little bit less sophisticated, but then again, if you are good enough to make hero calls and hero faults, you should be crushing NL50 anyway, and it shouldn't be hard for you to get to small stakes where you can actually make use of those abilities better. Alright, so let's move on to the session. Alright, I've just started this session. I'm at 4 tables of NL50 at the moment. Don't really know any of these guys, so I'll be paying close attention, trying to get some fast general reads on these players. The HUD stats in the beginning aren't really valuable because the sample sizes are way too small, but observing a single hand can get you some can give you a pretty good feel about an opponent. Like if he's betting second pair, that tells something about him. If he's checking top pair, that says something about him. So by observing an actual hand history, you get way more information early on in the session than by using HUD stats. I'm gonna start out by opening the small blind 100% against everyone, just because I think they'll likely fold too much. And I make it 2.5x on the button, though at NL50 it's kind of a pain to actually type the 1.25, so I might just end up making it 1.5 for min raising. I'm out of position with the ace jack here, but because his stack size is a little bit more shallow, I'm not that comfortable calling off a shove. And also when I flop one pair in a single raise spot now, there's not that much money behind, so I can comfortably get it in with a one pair hand, and that makes this hand easier to play out of position. So I think flatting there is slightly better than 3-betting. I think folding would be horrible. And when he bets this small, I'm just gonna try raising to see how he responds. If he calls, then I know that when he underbets he has something right. Yeah, I called really fast. I should of course have c-bet the flop, but I was talking about the other hand. Anything in the ace, I kinda have to bluff at it. Like 8 should do the trick to get him off a jack. The ace is a good card because it allows me to bluff, but if it was a brick and I had to give up, that also wouldn't be bad, because then I get to see what hand he had, and I would have gotten a read. like right now I want some money, but I have no read. But otherwise I would have lost some money, but gotten a read, and then I can use that read to make money in future spots, which I won't be able to now. Of course, there's no guarantee that you get in one of the spots where that read is useful, but the pot was $9.50, so it's probably more valuable to win that that pot than it is to get the read. But reads can have pretty big value. It's hard to put an exact number from to it, but I really wouldn't feel too bad if I had to check back the river just to get the showdown. This guy makes a pretty small raise over a limper. I don't think that's a very strong hand. I could be wrong, it's just a leak of him that he raises small with premiums or something, but it smells weak, so I'm just gonna 3-bet. I'm suited, I have some sort of post-flop playability. Of course, it's a pretty bad hand, but it just reeks of weakness, so I'm going for it. And also by playing back at your opponents, you can get reads on them faster. Right, if he has any sort of underpair, this is a horrible flop for him, and he will probably fold it to $7. No need to bet larger. Here I'm flatting the tens because there's a fish in a big blind. I want to keep him in. And here I'm gonna 3-bet just because it's my first 3-bet at the table. Right, and he does raise. No. Alright, so this is kind of the thing I talked about. It's so hard to get the grasp on these players because it's low stakes, it's micro stakes. So the way you beat it is to just make strong hands and get the showdown. So I'm not folding the 10. See, he had the king queen, completely random hand. If he's doing it with king queen, he's probably also doing it with ace jack, maybe ace 10 suited, under pairs to my 10s probably as well. It proves that his range for shoving there is probably pretty wide. I'll probably never play with him again, but just this is a note that I would normally take, so I'll take it anyway to show you guys in the video. When there's no small blind, I think min raising from a theoretical point of view is slightly better than a 1.5 raise because there's less money to win. So you also have to you don't have to risk as much. There's also only one opponent who can have a hand instead of two. And I think you should pretty much min raise 100% as well, regardless of who the guy in the big blind is, because people will likely not adjust for the fact that the small blind is missing. But yeah, that's a really rare spot that won't really have an impact on your win rate, I think. But yeah. What was it, 20 BBs? 40 BBs, I think. Yeah, 40. If this jack was a deuce or something, I'd probably call here because people usually don't see bet the jacks. There's like a king or a bluff. But with the jack, with the board paired there, if the king pairs, my hand gets counterfeited, and that adds to the equity of his heir. So the point is c-betting here is not folding any better hand, and there are way more better than worse hands in his calling range. But I am not going to fold my hand, because when I check I give him a chance to bluff at the pot. And I think in these stakes play will generally be too passive so he won't go off on a triple barrel bluff with air or something that might, which is something that might happen at higher stakes where play is more aggressive. But at these stakes, I'm more comfortable making this play than at mid stakes or small stakes, because you can comfortably check fold the turn here, while at higher stakes you have to it's tougher. Right, there are some draws on this board, but the deuce and 3 are really low. Aren't that many straight rolls out there. Oh, he's betting pretty big. That's actually a sign of value. It's kind of a tell a lot of people have at these stakes. So even though I have no reads on the guy, I am gonna fast play my hand, because I don't want him to check back the turn with king jack when the turn brings the queen or something. And also don't want the flush to get there, and then when I check raising with my set, it looks like I have a flush. So I want to get the money in before the board changes. And he did just fold quite fast to it, so I'll take a note that he did it. Here I'm just gonna flat the suited connector because it's only a min raise, and the guy in the big blind is likely to come along for only the minimum, and then this guy is always limp calling, of course, so it's guaranteed to be a multi-way pot. Well, I guess he can limp raise sometimes, but then it's only costing me 1.5 big blind. If he raises larger, then flatting becomes worse. I don't think he's bluffing here. Into 3 people with a pretty big bet. So I will take a note on him. It's a suspicion, it's not confirmed, but I think that he donks when hit, and I'll put a question mark behind it, because it's not confirmed yet. But a suspicion. This could be this is a decent hand to squeeze, and a good squeezing spot. But this guy has been kind of tight with a small sample. But then again, it's a small sample, so you shouldn't really go by the hot stats too much. And by squeezing, I can get a read on him faster than by folding. So in any close spot early on, always take the at least if you're unless you're mass tabling. But when you're playing fewer tables, always if you have options, go for the line that gives you the biggest amount of information. Yeah, and the fact that he 4-bet me now, it's more likely that a tight player had a premium when he's raising than that a loose player has a premium when he's raising. So the fact that he 4-bet increases the chances of him actually being a tight player despite a small sample. Of course, he can still be a 30 VPIP getting aces, but once a player has raised, a tighter player will have aces more often than a loose player. You get called in position by what seems to be a pretty standard tight regular. These pretty standard tight regulars tend not to call too much with suited connectors in position, I find. It's a small sample again, but they call more with pocket pairs in position, and because of that I'm double barreling this, because first of all he won't really have a flush as often here as a looser player might have, and he also has a lot of pocket pairs that will call once in a full turn, like pocket nines, pocket eights. Here I think I flopped the nuts. Yeah, and I c-bet a bit on I guess it's a normal size c-bet. Should probably have gone a little bit bigger, but this guy seems to be a regular. If he was more fishy looking, I'd go close spot on every street, because fish, they don't get as suspicious as a regular might get when you use larger sizes. They're more first level players. They just go with their own hand instead of by what their opponent is doing. Now this is a hand that might be. I hope this goes to showdown, because this guy's a fish and he's just made some sort of fishy plays, and now we get to see what they mean. Yeah, I'm just gonna 3-bet it. A small sample, but he has been somewhat aggro. But on top of that, 3-betting is more likely to give me a read on him than folding. So anytime you can do something, it wouldn't be burning money to do something, then do it if it gives you a read. Pick up a gut shot, just gonna c-bet it. And he check folded. Could mean he had random broadways. But yeah, can't really take a note about that yet. Again, here I can 3-bet, I can fold. I'm just gonna 3-bet to get more of a feeling for the guy. Here I'm flatting the ace-jack because there are two fish on my left and definitely want to keep him in. If they have a hand like ace-8 offsuit, there's no way they're folding. And if I 3-bet, then they are folding, and I just end up playing against a tight range from this guy just limp called a 3-bet. I'll give him the green label. Green is for any player that can't beat the any losing player gets green, and any like monstrous fish gets purple. I don't know if he's a monstrous fish yet, so I'll start with green, but if he does something like extremely bad, I'll whoops, this was oh no, it's a pre-flop caller, not a raiser. Checking is good. It's probably c-betting every single air combination is in his range here, so I think this is a pretty clear check call, because ace-jack is in great shape against all the random high cards that he can have there. This went to showdown, and he limp called ace-king. Quite some draws out there, and he can also be barreling any ace himself, so I'm gonna call twice. Also, if he had a hand like pocket tens, he's probably checking the turn instead of double barreling it, so his range gets more polarized when he double barrels, and that means that any bluff catcher can beat the air part of his range, and ace-jack is a bluff catcher against the air. And alright, he did double barrel tens. I think that's good that he did it, but it's unusual. Even at small stakes, a lot of people won't do that. Oops. Oh, I was gonna bet 9. Good thing I didn't. Let me finish up this note. So, limp called with ace-king. Under bet from that earlier hand with medium pair. have the feeling that I'm forgetting to take a note about something. Oh well, we'll get a new spot. When a guy makes those thin double barrels, a way that you can fight that is to check raise more often, because he's depolarizing his betting range essentially. So a hand like pocket tens doesn't want to get raised. That's why a lot of people check it back. And when he isn't doing that, then raising, it doesn't only make him fold his air, but it also makes him fold some actual hands that he would probably have won the pot with had he just checked. But then again, he might not be the type to actually fold pocket tens. Maybe he just puts me on a draw. He might be betting to get value from the draws, and then when he gets check raised, he puts me on a draw. Don't have any reads on how he plays it yet. But yeah, if you just look at the HUD stats, you see, oh well, he has double barreled the turn 3 times. But as a small sample, he could simply have had a decent hand every time, or maybe he was bluffing every time. But the fact that he also does it with second pair, that's actually a really valuable read, way more than all these HUD stats. If I could choose between starting the session with only that read or only these HUD stats, I would definitely go for the read. Here I'll just call quickly before a timeout. I think anyone with an overpair here is gonna be betting it, so I'm gonna check raise and get it in. Not the greatest board for c-betting into 2 people. That's a shame. Well, he doesn't have an overpair, he doesn't have an overpair. They both probably don't have draws. This guy might still have something though, like an underpair, but he'll check it because he's afraid of the jack. I think I'll just make a small bet for protection, just to fall out like random king queen hands, because there are 3 people. If all overcards are out there, then they have still a significant amount of equity against my pocket tens. Yeah, I think I should probably have just check folded this flop because it was 3-way, and it's kinda unlikely that you get a fold on this board unless you fire multiple barrels. And I don't really have any reads on these guys except that they seem tight over the small sample, and they can easily have a strong hand on a board like that. That's interesting. We know that he with this huge bet he folded to a raise, and now he's making a small raise. So when the huge one was likely a bluff, then this small one is likely for value. So he probably hit the jack. I'm gonna give him a green label because he's obviously not a winning player. I like his screen name. If you're not calling in this spot with his hand, then at least squeeze it, because in that case it's one of the strongest hands that you're not calling. But you know, suited ace plays well multi-way, and especially if it's one of the wheel aces, can give you some extra draws. And also if your kicker ever makes trips, especially with the deuce, it's harder for people to put you on it. Right, here I'm gonna bet for protection and probably barrel. I could take a small stab with air, but I think at least one person will have a something like a pocket sevens or an 8, and they're gonna call at least once. I think if he had a king or he had a king, they would have bet, so the only person I'm really worried about that can have a hand to call me down with on 3 streets is this guy. Right, so he's out the way. If any of them check call now, I'm triple barreling. I took the note there because he just check folded, a pretty decent board to see bet. When he 3-bets that small out of position, only 3 times the size of my raise, there's no way I'm falling with any pair. He's just not making it expensive enough for me to call. That is a rather large c-bet. It could be a tell. Maybe it's a standard. I'm just gonna call once and fold to further aggression. I think that's a pretty standard play. If he bombs it here, then he definitely has a tell for value. Yeah, just calling here. Want to keep this guy in, gives him a chance to maybe check raise or something. Okay, so when he checks, he's either check raising all in with an overpair, or he's just giving up with ace king. I'll just check back. Yeah, I could bet like $3 or something to get a call out of ace king. If he still checks here, then I'm definitely value betting. Alright, so how much will he call with ace king? Probably like this. Interesting. This used to always have top pair top kicker beat. However, it could be that he turned a jack. It's almost never a bluff. Yeah, I think you just have to shove it in here. Probably gonna see the nuts, but you know, yeah. Against these completely random unknowns, you just beat them by getting a strong by making a strong hand and going to showdown, because they do so much random stuff that it's hard to you know, really know exactly where you're at in every situation. And now that I have this read, the next time I'm definitely folding. And he's obviously a fish, I'll give him the green label. This guy has been falling to every 3-bet so far, so I'm just gonna keep 3-betting him until he responds. This guy's pretty tight. Probably means that he has mostly broadways and pocket pairs in his calling range there. So I'm just c-betting for a little bit of value from the sixes and sevens, and also to just fall out over pairs. Because he's so tight, I think he's unlikely to bluff at me on the turn, so I'm just giving him free cards if I check it back there. And if he has a set, he's pretty much always raising, so I think when he check calls, he either has pocket nines, maybe tens, but way more likely pocket sixes or pocket sevens, so I'd probably double barrel. Unless the turn was a king or something where I'd expect him to fold his hand. Actually on the king I might go for the triple barrel to also make him fold eights and nines. Yeah, so on the safe card I'd double barrel for value, and on the scary card I'd triple barrel as a bluff. I think that's probably the best. Now say the turn here is a brick and I bet and he min raises. I'm definitely calling because I know he has a jack. So the question is, if I bet here, do I get him to fold a better hand than mine? I don't think he's folding a hand like pocket sevens unless I triple barrel. I think that's actually pretty safe to bet here because when he has a jack he probably min raises me here, so when he calls he actually has like the ace 5 or the pocket sevens and I can go for the triple barrel. So when he calls I'm shoving the river because I have this read on him that he likes to min raise the turn. Now he makes a larger raise. Probably because in that last hand he had the super nuts, but here he's kinda protecting against a draw or something. So let's see. $17. Yeah, if you min raised I'd be priced into call, but now yeah, I could fill up. I think it's a fold. I meant to bet 6 there for value, but I have a new keyboard. I'm still getting used to it. It's one of those ergonomical ones. It's a split keyboard. It's quite different from what I used to. If you're not calling here, then 3-bet it, because it's the best hand that you're folding otherwise. It's a pretty weak bet, but my equity is so horrible now. Just gonna let it go. Here I'm just folding because I have that single read on him from a hand where he played straightforward. Of course, it was a multi-way pot, not heads up, but you can usually expect tendencies to translate to other spots as well. So when he bets the turn, he's probably not bluffing. And I'm just going to fold it until I have further reads. So you're betting on the smaller side here because he seems really passive. 22-2. And a passive player is usually very first level, so he'll fold his air regardless of my bet size. Now the downside of these tight passive players is that they have a lot of strong aces in their flatting range. So boards that are normally good for the preflop raiser can actually also easily be good for him because he actually has preflop raising range, preflop raising hands in his calling range. Hey, is it blind versus blind against the same guy twice in a row? Oh well, same logic applies. Normally I'd see bet 2 or 250, but just making it half pot against him. Alright. That second one might have been a bluff because he saw me fold the first time. We'll see. Just take a quick note on him that he did that twice in a row. Oh wait, he actually limp called that first time. I thought it was blind versus blind. I don't think this guy is bluffing here. He seems to be tight regular, and then from the... This is great. I don't think he's folding if he has an ace. And he could have pocket sixes. Huh. Alright, so from that hand... So every time I see this guy underbet the turn, I'm just gonna raise him. And when he 10 calls, I'll just bet like 75% pot on the river. Though I expect him to mostly fold to turn raises. Normally I'd isolate a limper with Queen 9, but because he's somewhat tight passive, I'm just gonna get myself in some bad spots there. So against him I'll fold. See, against this guy I would have raised it, because this guy has opened some more hands, and that weakens his limping range. But this guy doesn't seem to be raising at all. This is of course a bad board, but I want to fall out his random overs, so I'll c-bet at it anyway. And my overs are probably clean out. Gonna double barrel this for value, because he likely has a lot of draws in his range here. He could have a weaker 9. He might be the type to not even check fold an underpair on a board like that. So I'd have double barreled for value there, and then check back river. Or maybe min bet the river or something. See, this guy I am raising, because he has raised pre-flop so far, so that means his limping range is likely weaker. No point in c-betting once I have the showdown value. Just gonna give him a chance to bluff at it. Now here, if this was against the guy who was sitting here before, or was it another table? Anyway, the guy that double barreled with the pocket 10s on the king high board, I would actually probably fold his 7s on the flop, because I know that he's capable of double barreling a 9 and pocket 8s. But most people are not capable of doing that. So you know, I'm just calling there with the 7s, obviously. And when he bets 550 into 850 or something on the turn, I think his hand is a little bit weak. Most people have the bet sizing tell on the turn, where when they bet huge it's for value. So now, do I turn my hand into a bluff? No, I'll just check it back, see what he has. Alright, total air. See, I could, maybe bluffing there was slightly plus EV to get him off. Yeah, he probably doesn't even fold ace king at these stakes. So it's probably good to check back anyway, but let's say that bluffing was slightly plus EV there for whatever reason. By checking, I do get to see his hand, and that's also valuable. Like right now, I know that he made a weak double barrel with pure air. No sort of outs at all. Right, I think I'm just gonna finish up the orbits, so the video won't get too long. Alright, at the end of the session I just got dealt some air pre-flop, so I cut it out because it was just me folding and boring to watch. These are the stats, my stats from the session, if you're interested in them. I've tried playing fairly solid this session, you know, to emphasize that you just need to make a hand and get to showdown essentially. My VVIP here is actually lower than what I play at small stakes or mid stakes. So even though most of you find this pretty high probably, I did try to play more more tight, aggressive this session. If I was less confident in my edge, I would have folded a lot of hands pre-flop. Like, let's see what I've been opening from middle position. yeah, like 6-7 suited, you can just fold it pre-flop. I think it's fine. That should probably be your default play at these stakes, so it's fine. You know, if you want to experiment, open up your game, it's fine to do that, but normally you can just fold them. Also 44% on the button, that's pretty tight. Let's see what I've been folding. Probably have to put a filter. Facing unopened. Yeah, 6-8, 4-6, 7-3, Jack-6. Very often you can just get away with opening any two because the players in the blinds fold enough. But at these stakes people are a little bit less weak tight and more calling stations, so it's fine if you play tighter. Yeah, there was one hand I wanted to review quickly. It was this blind versus blind hand with the kings. It was his first hand at the table. I see a bet he called, I bet turn, and here he min raises. Now, here I have to make a decision. Do I want to get the money in or not? Calling kinda sucks. You know, he's never doing this as a bluff. I guess he could because of the spaz factor. But let's say, what is his value range for doing this? Well, I gave him the sets, the straights, random turns 2 pairs, and the only hand that I beat, ace jack. That's the only hand I gave him. And against that I have like 31.2% equity, and stacking off here would be an additional 25.50, and the final pot is gonna be 70. So 25.50 divided by 70. This is the equity I need to call here, and I don't have that equity against that range. So if this is his range, it should be a fold. And some people don't min raise ace jack here, then it's definitely a fold. But then again, he could randomly be doing something with, you know, pure air because of the spaz factor. But this typical line of call flop min raise turn, that is such a consistent line for monsters from fish that I actually think I should have folded the kings to the min raise here. You know, normally I have no trouble folding top pair top kicker to min raises on the turn, and any hand that beats top pair top kicker, you know, unless he has pocket queens, then it also beats pocket kings. So yeah, this was probably a fold. That's kind of in contrast with what I said at the start of the video, that against these random people you should just be making strong hands and then getting to showdown because you know, they're too unpredictable to make hero folds. But this particular line is actually one of the things that are predictable and usually for monstrous value at these stakes. You know, in random other spots, you should still just go with the strength of your hand if you're in doubt. But in this spot, there's almost no doubt actually, and yeah, I think it was a bit sloppy to get it in, or this should have just been a fold. The next video I'll probably be actually playing hyper aggressive and trying to get into as many spots as possible, in contrast with this video where I've been playing more, you know, a little bit more tight aggressive despite being 30 VPIP. All the watchers that actually play micro stakes and think like, oh, GrindCore is awesome with his loose aggressive play, I want to be like him and open up, you know, 4 or 5 suited from under the gun. You are gonna lose money. You should be playing more tight aggressive until you get all the basics down, and then once you're already beating NL50, then you can start opening up your game and taking away some more elements from my series. But my series, the Thin Red Line, was really geared towards small stakes players and not towards micro stakes players, even though it was quite popular with micro stakes players as well. But you have to be really careful if you use any of the concepts that I apply there at micro stakes, because they're just you know, they'll work less often because micro stakes, there's more random stuff going on and less predictability. Alright, so I'll see you guys next week.